I've seen a whole bunch of YouTubers talk about how Left 4 Dead 2 is such an amazing game, and I agree with that, but I think there's one part that not a lot of people recognize or talk about at least, and that's vocalizers. So made a video about vocalizers on this channel before. They're really fantastic piece of technology that Valve has and that are really original to their game. They exist in Team Fortress 2 somewhat, and that's where I got my channel name and where I kind of introduced myself to Valve in whatever kind of way you want to put that. And Team Fortress 2 has its own talker sort of system, I guess would be the proper word for that. It's an easy way for people to understand what the sort of situation you're in is and what you need to do with your team. Sort of enhances the coordination of your team. Say for example, you hear a tank around the corner, you can prepare for that by saying tank, tank, tank out loud. Same thing goes if you hear a boomer, there's specific lines. Hear a boomer, hear a spitter. It depends if you're the Left 4 Dead 1 cast or Left 4 Dead 2 cast. So many extra voice lines. It's a great way to make friendships, which sounds kind of weird, but just the nature of games and how they work. There's not a lot of games that let you do that, being able to make friends without actually saying a word. It's the real-time ability to, make a real YouTube poop. Some people have said in my comments that's kind of what it is. That's really what using voice lines in Left 4 Dead 2 is. It's a real-time comedy combined with a little bit of tactical shooter movement sort of stuff. It's not too tactical. You're fighting zombies. This is not Counter-Strike. But at the same time, it's still a great way to kind of, make friends. I know I play with Jean-Claude Van Damme, KGK, and Aegon, and a couple other people as well. If you're in my friends list, sorry if I didn't say your name, but a lot of people have an issue with the fact that voice lines are kind of, it depends on like how you use them, obviously, and when you're in a public setting, it's hard to gauge that, which is where I think a lot of people have issues with voice lines. In a typical Valve server, you could just be a guy that just screams constantly, and people are going to get tired of that, but you can learn how to use them more effectively. I've played with new players that have, obviously from the way they play, like I'll join an easy match just for fun, just to help people out, because not everyone is a pro gamer that, has 2,000 hours, has played for like 10 years. Some people have just started playing Left 4 Dead 2. I know it's a 14-year-old game almost. It's just the fact that not a lot of people know games as well as, you do, which is a weird thing to say, but other people, have lives and stuff. They do other things besides go on YouTube and whatnot. And that's really where I started in my like Left 4 Dead 2 journey, so to speak. It was just about helping people, honestly, in Left 4 Dead 2 and helping myself help other people by using voice lines, which in some respects is kind of a try-hard sort of way to look at the game. But at the same time, there's nothing better than just being able to help people out, if they're getting like smoke and or if they're getting like, charged, or if you hear a charger or you hear a jockey, you can warn them about that. You can say, hold on, I'm right behind you, so they don't have to like look right behind you. They can hear you. It's that part of being in the game. It's sort of a role-playing enabler, which I've not done like real-time voice role-playing. I've seen a little bit of what that's kind of like, and voice lines kind of help you do that sort of thing as well, by letting you kind of express yourself as the character that you're playing as, so as to kind of stay in the game as much as possible. And it's definitely fine for people that want to actually talk and stuff, but for people that can't, or who people who don't speak the same language, or who people who just don't feel comfortable talking to people on the internet, there's always voice lines to get your point across just fine. And another part is just with that roleplay aspect, it's very easy to get into characters, especially when you're playing, Rochelle or Zoe. They have very dramatic, getting bashed or charged or I'm down sort of voice lines. If you're ever, getting destroyed in a situation, you can use like the crushed voice line is very dramatic for Zoe. So you can help kind of enhance the default experience by adding your own little take on like what Zoe might say in a certain given situation, or what Bill might say in a certain situation, or Coach or Nick or Alice. It's adding your own sort of flavor to what Valve kind of made, and I think all this kind of adds to the sheer replayability of the game, whether it's just playing with your teammates and being able to work through different situations. But yeah, it's sort of a way to enhance the default experience of Left 4 Dead 2, and it's something I don't see in a lot of games. Obviously, it seems like it's a very difficult thing to implement, and it takes a certain amount of vocal talent. Thank you to all the voice actors and the face models and the writers and everything like that in Left 4 Dead 2 for making such a memorable cast of characters that have their personalities and flaws and opinions. Like Francis is very, sort of negative and doubts things and has weird beliefs and whatnot. You got Coach with his unstoppable positivity, and no matter what the sort of situation is, and that's sort of what you kind of channel whenever you kind of role play as these characters, because these characters have depth to them. They're very fleshed out characters that have personalities. It's kind of your ability to kind of add a little bit of flavor to that, and that's what I think vocalizers are all about. They're really underrepresented in YouTube, I think, and I hope I can kind of elucidate a bit what I kind of enjoy about them, and obviously there's the part of it being super easy to use. With just a key press and a mouse movement, you can easily select a line that best fits the situation. There's sort of like 3 categories. I mean, I think there's kind of like 4. You could argue there's a 5th, but I'll kind of go. You got your default sort of voice lines, which all vocalizers, as far as I know, use. The default radio, yes, no, taunt, hurrah, swear, I'm with you, I'll save you. That's your default sort of wheels. You got your spotting and special ones, which are like tank, witch, I hear witch, kill your light, I hear boomer, that sort of thing. Those are like your second tier useful additions that vocalizers bring that are not part of the default experience. And then you got your third kinds, which are like the miscellaneous ones. These are like character specific ones. You've got like Francis talking about, I don't know, what does he talk about? How he hates things, I guess. You got Coach talking about, cotton candy, the wise pharaoh of food. You got Rochelle talking about how she hates, she likes fried okra. Rochelle likes fried okra, I remember that. So that's like kind of the character-centered voice lines. And then I guess the fourth one are the ones that are typically unavailable on a lot of servers. They have like an L next to them in Helricas. So they exist on a lot of menus, but aren't usually accessible. They're usually the more like hyper-specific voice lines, which I can appreciate Valve kind of keeping out of the main sort of game. And some of them are also not like mean-spirited, but I could definitely see people using them to harass people, so I can imagine that's probably why they kept them out of sort of Valve server experience. Voice lines they're very magical. There's a ton of opinions about them out there. Some people absolutely despise them. They will not stand for them. They will not play with people that use voice lines. And especially, if you're getting into the hardcore, like, versus community, voice lines are pretty much non-existent. They got, like, cooldowns and stuff in versus, and you can't use many of them outside the very first, like, yes, no, hurrah, I'll save you voice lines. So versus is kind of devoid of that sort of fun, but versus is also its own little can of worms. It's got its own community. It's got its own meta. It's got its own protocols and stuff. Like, you gotta usually type, like, R when you're ready. And you also got your survival stands, which has its own different, slightly similar to versus, slightly similar to campaign, and then there's obviously the angle of just making sort of in jokes with your own little squad that you have. I know for me, KGK and JCVD and Aegon, anytime we get like stupid damage or really like get slapped when we probably shouldn't have, we usually use the I'm down as a kind of way to like jokingly say like, oh crap, I got hit when I shouldn't have. Damn it. So that's kind of that's a funny little quip there. And there's a bunch of other stuff that you can make with your team. It's just a matter of having fun. I mean, you definitely can calculate your voice lines. Pardon my French, but there's ones involving Nick and your mom's car. We'll just leave it at that. If you know with that one. But you can definitely mix a lot of voice lines like that. Bit of footage of me doing that. And yeah, just being able to provide quick, instantaneous notifications about when a boomer might be around the corner, when a charger, jockey, hunter, whatever you have might be around the corner, especially for new people, is really sort of helpful in that regard. That's a very important part of it, and probably the main reason, or the main avenue for which I got involved in sort of the Left 4 Dead 2 community as much or as little as I have. And there's times when the voice lines, like, they're not perfect. There's some voice lines that, you'll say like, oh, I'm sorry, but like Coach sometimes will say like, ah, shit, I'm sorry. Like the number one example for me is Rochelle has a taunt line, which is not very useful, which is, oh, shut up. It's obviously said in like a haha, like you're my friend. Oh, shut up, you. Sometimes like just oh, shut up can sometimes just come out kind of wrong. Yeah, it's a way to, to add an extra dimension to the characters that you're playing as in this awesome game world created by Valve. It's an emotional investment that these characters are, and everybody, has their sort of ideas of how they are and how they act and their personalities and their motivations and whatnot. And you can use that to sort of make creative sentences and a whole bunch of different avenues for expression are at your fingertips with these vocalizers. So if you don't have a vocalizer, I definitely recommend you check them out. It doesn't have to be hell, like even just using the ones that are like about hearing nearby infected or spotting them directly, or just the lookout voice line are awesome. You can definitely get some mileage out of having the two default menus, but there's that special spotting ability that is just absolutely key for communication, for the purposes of what I think these voice lines are best used for in a general sort of sense. It's really shocking to me that they aren't part of the default experience, but I guess that's Valve's design that they wanted to do, so fair enough to them. And I can definitely see why it could get annoying, or you can become like the player that's the boy who cried wolf in terms of the threats that are nearby, that sort of thing, so you don't want that as well. At the end of the day, I think I'm typically not a voice chat sort of guy, but when it comes to voice lines, I'm all about them, and I'm using them constantly. Mix of joking, and it's a mix of being genuinely helpful. I try to put myself in the shoes of the people that I'm playing with to the best of my abilities, so that whenever I'm using a voice line, I try to make it, if it's probably a new person, I use them, more for direct to the point, a little bit of added flair. If someone messes up really bad and I kind of want give them a little jab, I'll do that sometimes, and even that sometimes depends on the person if they're okay with that sort of thing. I try not to harass people. That's just, you get nothing good out of that. You get bad attitudes. You don't get good teamwork. That's for sure. So that's definitely something to avoid. And yeah, there's also the part of just adding on to the voice lines that your characters already speak, especially when it comes to depends on the map, depends on the server, depends on the campaign, depends on the characters, and it just takes a whole bunch of playing the game just to figure out how these things sort of interact. And I can tell you if you're on hard rain and you press E on the burger tank sign, Ellis says, "Sign is on, baby, sign is on." So in that aspect, a lot of patience to learn these sort of things, but I think the characters are so awesome, and they've been memed over the last 13 years. Obviously, pills here and barbecue bacon burger, large order of fries. Those voice lines. Those memes of Coach and Lewis and Francis hating everything, and Bill just being a boomer. Everyone calling him a boomer. Old YouTube poop videos that were kind of the base of this game and its history. Although I personally was inspired by Killplix back in the day when he was uploading it with his squad. And even though they didn't really use voice lines, and they started in Left 4 Dead 1 and kind of did a little bit of Left 4 Dead 2 and petered off there and did their own thing, moved on with their lives and whatnot. But yeah, I just have sort of a general positive philosophy when it comes to these voice lines. I don't try and use any sort of malice or hatefulness in them. They're purely for tactical team building usages, and I hope you guys can sort of glean a little bit of that out of this spiel